My wife and I got a divorce last year. Our relationship failed after she was charged with felony credit card fraud and ended up pleading guilty to a lesser charge. She had been a mom to our two sons, 5 and 3, and had taken credit cards out in my mom's name to pay for God knows what. She shattered my trust. I work full-time and make a decent living, but nothing extravagant. I had no clue what my wife was doing until cops showed up at my door with a warrant and took my wife away in cuffs and took 2 laptops as evidence. When I got the full story, I filed for divorce immediately. Aside from being a criminal, she was a good mom. She tried to justify what she did by saying she was just doing what was best for our kids, which I felt was total BS given that she never mentioned wanting for anything, and any time she asked to spend on something I almost always said yes. I hired a good lawyer and asked for full custody of my kids. My ex begged me not to do that, saying she needed her kids. But she was still looking at up to a year in jail, and nothing her lawyer said could sway the judge to grant her anything more than supervised visitation. She ended up doing 90 days in jail, paying some fines and restitution, but I've allowed her to see our sons almost every time she's asked. The last year has been total hell, but we've made it work. A few months ago I was offered a much more lucrative position a few states away. I talked with my lawyer about what it would mean if I moved and what the process was. He said that since I have full custody, I have to file a petition with the court to move. So I told my wife what I wanted to do and she exploded. She claimed I was stealing her kids from her, that she's made a lot of strides to get herself to a better place, and that she would fight me tooth and nail for her kids. Well, I filed the petition, got the go-ahead from the courts, and accepted the job. When the judge gave his ruling, my wife burst into tears and began sobbing. It was heartbreaking. I know in my head that I'm doing the right thing for my sons. They are young enough that a move like this won't be too traumatic, but I also feel like their lives have already been completely overturned and I'm just adding more to that. As for my wife, she's a wreck. She's been begging me to reconsider the move, trying everything from guilt trips, manipulation, bargaining. It's like she's going through the stages of grief. But from my point of view, she did this to herself. She lied and broke the law. I have very little sympathy for her. I know at some point she will probably try to file for partial custody, and I'm prepared for that. For now, I'm just trying to do what's best for me and my sons. Does that make me an asshole? The area my sons and I live in is a smaller community. Not everyone knows everyone, small, but close. The crime my ex committed was news here. It was in the paper. People know about it. I get weird looks when I'm out in public. People have stopped inviting my sons to birthday parties. I don't want my sons to be bullied and teased in school about their mother being a criminal. I am not going to permanently alienate my sons from their mother. I will make sure they are able to talk and FaceTime with her whenever they want. I will be the one who makes the drive back in order for them to see her until she is able to make arrangements to allow her to do so. I will continue to work with my ex to make sure she is included in things like birthdays and holidays. I know my sons and I will all need therapy from this. There is not good mental health help available where my previous job is. My new job offers on-site childcare, and I will have access to counseling and therapy for myself and my sons that we would not have access to without moving. The schools near my new job are head and shoulders above the ones near my previous job. If my ex gets her life back on track and is able to move closer to us, I'm all for it. If she does the things she needs to do in order to petition for shared custody, I don't intend on fighting her for that. But until she does that, I will not allow her anything more than the supervised visits ruled by the court. I will also not ask for any of the court-ordered child support. We won't need it. To all the people who screamed, but she's their mother. Yes, and she always will be. And I remind my sons daily that their mom loves them very much and that she wishes she can be with them like before. I am angry and resentful of my wife, but I work very, very hard to not let any of those feelings impact my sons and their relationship with their mom. Lots of comments from Oop, so a quick explanation of what the ex did. Oop, she took out multiple credit cards in my mom's name after getting her SSN somehow. Racked up about $30,000 before she got caught. My mom alerted her credit card company when she saw a couple unauthorized credit checks from different credit companies, and then the authorities got involved. I had no clue. She apparently spent most of the money on clothes and toys for the kids, makeup and clothes for herself. But that's a shitload of toys and clothes, so I find it hard to believe. Op says the kids' credit is clean. She didn't just break the law, she broke my trust. She defrauded my own mother of $30,000. My elderly mother who lives on a fixed income. My mom has spent the last year putting her life back together after a person who she loved like her own daughter betrayed her. The amount of people dismissing my ex's actions without thinking of the consequences of what she did is staggering. My ex's crime might not have been violent or abusive, but the wounds are still there and will take time to heal. The whole "but she's their mother" stuff is BS. She'll still get to see our sons, I will make sure she does. But she has a long, uphill climb to earn my true SD back. Oop, she was a SOM by choice. She had a college degree, ironically in criminal science. Our state is a 50-50 divorce state, so she still got half our assets in the divorce, and since both our names are on our house title, she'll get half of that if we sell it. I'm no lawyer, so I don't know what identity theft does to one's credit rating, but I imagine it doesn't help it. She's not completely destitute. If she is allowed to move closer to us, I will welcome that and continue to work with her so she can be in our sons' lives. Oop, she was obviously very caught off guard. No one saw this coming. She had to go through so much BS to get her credit cleared up, get credit charges nullified, try to rebuild her credit. She wanted the book thrown at my ex and cussed out the prosecutor for offering a plea bargain. How his mother is doing now, barely getting back on her feet. She's on a fixed income, so this really put a strain on her. I will probably have to step in at some point and help her. Yet another reason I want to take the new job and increased pay. Oop, in our state her original charge was felony grand theft. That carries a 15 to 25 year prison sentence. She got a plea deal from the prosecutor that dropped it below felony level mostly because it was her first offense. Oop, I don't know her full financial situation. I know she's working a couple part-time jobs and has a small 2BR apartment. Whether or not she could move I don't know. She's under probation so she'd need to apply to move anyway. My new job pays over twice what my previous did. It's a huge opportunity for me to provide a better life for my sons. I don't want to sit around here and wait for my ex to get her shit together. Oop, I do not intend on isolating my sons from their mother or preventing her from seeing them. But I also will not allow anything other than court-approved, supervised visits. FaceTime and all that stuff. I will work with her to make sure she gets to talk with them. Up there will be no weekends at mom's place until the court gives the okay. I'm not saying I believe she will try to run away with my kids, but I also never believed she would defraud my mother of $30,000. Oop, she spent the majority of it on makeup and designer clothes. Oop, I haven't put too much thought into that part yet, but I do not intend on completely isolating them from her. If she can figure out a way to see them, I will not prevent that. I imagine holidays will be something we need to figure out as well. But like I said, I do not intend on preventing her from seeing our sons. She's court ordered to pay child support, but so far I haven't seen a dime and I haven't asked. You may need to think of it. If she is on probation, she may not be able to come to you, and frankly, I'm not sure she'll be able to afford to travel to you anyway, as she was a SOM. I'm not saying that you aren't doing what's best for your kids, but I feel like you are just screwing your ex because you're hurt/angry/sad, all totally valid feelings, about the situation. And using your sons in the process. So, I'm going with ESH, except your sons. Oop, I will admit that part of me wants to move so that I can get a fresh start as well. The last year has been total hell for me. I'm trying not to use my kids as pawns here, but I know this job can offer us opportunities that my current job just can't match. Update 1. I did end up taking the new job and moved with my sons. We have been settling into our new lives quite nicely over the last month and things have been going really well. My sons love the new house, they have made friends with some other kids their age in the neighborhood. My job has been going really well and I really couldn't have hoped for things to go better than they have. I got both of my sons into a great therapy program and the three of us have also been doing counseling sessions together. My boys have been adjusting amazingly well and I'm so happy and proud of how the wife handled this. We've also made 2 trips back to see their mother since she is still in the process of figuring out what she will be allowed to do in relation to her probation. We've also been doing many video calls a week with her. My sons still don't understand why their mom isn't here with us, but they do seem to grasp that this is going to be their new normal. In comparison with how well myself and my sons are adjusting, my ex is the complete opposite. She is still very angry with me and thinks I'm a complete a-hole. She's frustrated with the process of going through the courts to be allowed to move. She's frustrated that I'm not willing to drive our sons back to see her as often as she'd like. She feels she's being marginalized in their lives and that I am pulling them away from her. When she was complaining about all of this during our last visit, I reminded her that all of those things are consequences of her own actions and she blew up at me by saying I am kicking her when she's already down and I didn't need to take her sons away from her. I told her how well our sons are doing and how happy they are and she should be proud of how strong and resilient they've been. She then started begging me to please move back so that she can be closer because she's not sure the courts will allow her to move and the process is taking too long. I told her that wasn't going to happen, but if there is anything I can do with the court process, that I would be willing to help if I can. I reminded her that I haven't said anything about her not paying the court-ordered child support, but that our boys seem to be in a much better place already and I'm not going to take that away from them. Every time we have a video call with her, as soon as she says goodbye to our sons she starts asking me to consider moving back home. I tell her every time that it is not happening. I'm not a robot and I do feel bad to see her so desperate and distraught, but when I look at my sons playing and laughing with their new friends, I know I've done the right thing no matter the cost to my ex. I reminded her that I haven't said anything about her not paying the court-ordered child support. It's a token amount based on her income. With my higher salary I don't need her help to provide for our kids, but she hasn't made an effort to pay anything yet either. She already blames me for a lot of things. We'll just add that one to the list. The effects on my kids have been positive. They are laughing playing with friends again instead of being ostracized by people who punished them because of what their mother did. They are in therapy that we wouldn't have had access to previously. They are in childcare programs that are head and shoulders above what we had access to previously. My priority is my kids, not my ex-wife's feelings. Update 2. I have full custody of my 2 sons that I have with my ex-wife. See my past posts for some backstory on our relationship and why I have full custody. Because I now live a few states away from where my wife lives, I always knew that this holiday season was going to be difficult. For Thanksgiving this year I made the drive back to my wife's place so that she could spend the holiday with our sons. During this visit, I talked with her about plans for Christmas and told her that due to potential winter weather and the pandemic, I would prefer not to drive the kids to her again for Christmas. She did not like this and blew up on me about how I was isolating her from the kids. This was after I just drove hundreds of miles so that we could spend Thanksgiving together. I told her this was not up for debate and that we can plan for something in the spring once the weather warms up and the pandemic hopefully calms down a bit. I did however make sure to do a FaceTime call with her and the kids on Christmas Eve and told her that I would do the same thing on Christmas morning so that she could still see the kids open gifts that she sent to them. When I went to call her on Christmas morning, she didn't answer. I tried back a couple of times but she didn't answer and the last time it went straight to voicemail. Then, around dinner time, the doorbell rang. It was my ex. Of course, the boys were excited to see her, but I had a serious WTF moment. For a second, I actually thought about not even letting her in the house. But my sons were so excited to show her all their new toys that I couldn't do it. After things calmed down a bit, I asked her what the hell she was doing. She said she couldn't handle a Christmas away from her kids so she made the drive to see them. I told her it was messed up she did this without telling me but she said if she told me then I would have told her not to come. I then asked her if she got the okay from her probation officer and she said of course she did. She then asked if she could stay for the night since she didn't have a hotel and I allowed her to sleep in my guest room. Before I went to sleep that night, I sent an email to her probation officer asking if she had really asked for permission to travel. Since it was Christmas weekend I didn't hear back from them right away and my ex left the next day to head back home. That Monday, I got an email from the probation officer thanking me for reaching out to them and asking for a little more information which I provided. A couple days later I get a call from my ex and she's screaming at me and calling me an asshole for contacting her probation officer. Apparently she hadn't told them or asked them and now she could potentially land back in jail. She is accusing me of purposely trying to get her sent back to jail so that I can keep our kids away from her forever. That was never my intention, but I can kind of see why it looks like that to her. Does contacting her probation officer make me an asshole? Not sure how that is pertinent to anything here. And if I felt anyone on Reddit needed an update on my life, I would post an update. Sadly, it is very real. Now on to second story. Husband encouraged me to flash workman on a dare, then violently kicked me out of the car, and now begs forgiveness. Been together 10 years, married for 6. The last 2 or 3 years he started to show less and less interest in me. He does subscribe to a couple of OnlyFans accounts, which I'm not bothered about as it's no different to porn, so I know he still has sexual urges. I've tried talking to him a couple of times about this and told him I'm getting bored and frustrated and he knows I'm willing to try anything sexual so if there's anything he wants to do to get him motivated I'll try it. He just says duly noted and carries on with his day which is frustrating. A few nights ago we had friends round for tea and we got onto the subject of commutes and roadworks, with them saying how their commute has more than doubled due to a road they use having roadworks. Carol, the wife of the couple, then says we've found a way to make it more entertaining though haven't we? To her husband and they both started laughing. She then tells us that the roadworks are about 3 miles long with the groups of workers spread out to maybe 7 or 8 groups and they are normally going 10 to 15 miles per hour so when they get near one of the groups he beeps and she flashes them and they all cheer. I couldn't believe it as they seem so straight-laced. That night when they left my husband was saying how brave it is of them and that we should do it the next morning. I asked if he's sure. This is a man who didn't like when I posted a bikini pic on Facebook, and he said yes and we even had sex that night for the first time in months and he initiated for the first time in years. The next morning we were both of work and as soon as he woke up he mentioned me flashing. I asked if he's sure and it wasn't just horny talk and what if the men don't want to be flashed. He said he's sure and all men want to be flashed. We drive to the road and we see a grow up of workmen and my husband gets all giddy and says are you ready? I say yes and he says now. And beeps his horn and I lift my top up and they all cheer. We are going about 10 miles per hour when suddenly he slams his brakes on and tells me to get out. I was in shock. His face is red with anger and he's shouting get out you fucking slag. I start crying and he's leaning over me opening my car door and then takes off my seatbelt and starts pushing me out. The cars behind are beeping as he stopped traffic and he's yelling at the top of his voice. By now the workers have heard the commotion and 2 of them are rushing over to help. I turn to look at them and he pushes me really hard and the top half of my body falls out the car and I put my hands down. One of the workers is screaming at my husband and starts trying to open his door. The other worker is by me and quickly drags me out the car. He told me afterwards he saw my husband put the car in gear and thought he was going to drive off with me hanging out the car. My husband just left me. I was still only wearing a vest top and pajama shorts and my slippers as he'd wanted to rush out and do this. My phone was in his car and I didn't have any house keys. One of the workers took his jacket off and wrapped me up in that. They took me to a cabin that was their canteen and put the heater on and made me a cup of tea. I was so embarrassed. This lot had seen my boobs and then seen me getting abused and then fell out of a car and then rescued me all in the space of 30 seconds. I kept apologizing to them and said it was his idea, but they said it's okay and it happens a few times a day and they are used to it, but I think they were just trying to make me feel better. They were laughing and joking with me and were also sweet and funny. They asked if I wanted to ring anyone, but I don't know anyone's number apart from work and I didn't want them picking me up wearing next to nothing from a building site. I asked if I could ring a taxi, but they said I can't get in a taxi dressed how I am. The man, I'm assuming was their team leader, told one of them to drive me wherever I wanted to go, so I asked if I could go to my mom's about 5 miles away. They gave me some spare work boots to walk across the mud to the van and 2 of them drove me to my mom's and they were really sweet and making sure I was okay and even walked me to the front door. When my mom answered, I was hysterical and crying and they told her me and my husband had an argument and he left me by the side of the road. My mom offered them a drink and I tried to give them their coat and boots back, but they said it's okay. I told my mom we were driving to McDonald's and got in an argument. I didn't tell her about the pushing or anything. She drove me home and let me in with a spare key she has. I packed some things and went back to my mom's. My husband had been home as my phone was on the table. In the 5 days since, he's been ringing me non-stop saying he's sorry and he don't know what came over him. He said he heard someone shout "nice pair" and it made him angry. My friends are saying leave, his are obviously telling me to give him another chance. I'm 50-50, but if I do stay I'm going to insist on couples counseling for us both and sex therapy either for him or both of us. He says he doesn't want to involve other people in the relationship. It feels silly to throw it all away over a few seconds of madness and I should have just said no when he asked me to flash, as I know he's quite insecure. I was blinded by finally getting some sex and attention from him and thought I could get more. I took the workers their jacket and boots back and also made them 2 cakes and bought them 1,000 bags of Yorkshire tea as a thank you. Oop, that's the thought that's becoming more prevalent in my mind. I took pics of the bruises and scuffs on my arms and legs afterwards and I keep looking at them and thinking, what would I say to anyone else who show and me them? Update 1. Something happened last week and I've decided I don't want to be with him anymore. It did involve physical abuse and I have photos and witnesses, but I don't want to go down the route of involving the police. I bought the house in 2012. It's in my name. He moved in 2015. I've always paid the mortgage as he said he wasn't putting money into something he doesn't own, which is fair enough. We split all other bills 50-50. Any house modifications I have are for with proof, but maintenance on the house we split 50-50. I will eventually talk to a solicitor, but I just wanted to know exactly where I stand before doing so. Google doesn't really help, as some places say he has a right to half, others say he doesn't as it predates the marriage. No prenup or anything was ever signed. Update 2. I took people's advice on this sub and a couple of others and rang the police to report the attack. I spoke to the workers beforehand who said they'd back me up. They arrested my husband and then released him on bail, but told him he couldn't stay at my house so he's gone to his mom's. After the argument he told all our friends that I had cheated. I hadn't wanted to admit to people that I had flashed, but I felt like the tide was really turning against me and a lot of people were believing his lies, so I wrote a long message with a description of exactly what happened, plus pictures of my injuries including scrapes and bruises, plus screenshots of messages he sent admitting he asked me to flash and admitting he hit me, although he did blame me, saying if I just got out like he asked he wouldn't have had to do that. A few people apologized, most didn't, but I don't care anymore. I'm back home and he has to answer bail in a couple of months. The police don't sound confident they can get a conviction, but maybe that's how they are supposed to sound. I've spoke a little bit to a lawyer, but I can't really afford anything at the minute in that way. Been a sad few weeks, but an eye-opener, and I don't feel any guilt for getting the police involved or telling people what happened. Just working and keeping myself busy at the moment.